Welcome to module 27 in research methods and statistics. Today we are going to learn about action research and participatory action research. In traditional research, the role of the researcher is like that of a consultant. The organization that wants a research to be done will approach the researchers and ask them to conduct the research. The researchers then develop the research proposal, design the methodology, create the tools for data collection, collect the data and make sure the data is entered, work on data analysis and write up the research report. They then give these findings to the commissioning organization or the organization that wanted the research done, and along with their recommendations and suggestions. They have no control over what will be done with the findings later. The organization will decide how to implement the findings and what action will be taken based on the findings. So, researchers in traditional research are essentially outsiders who are not familiar with the field realities and have little control in how the findings are going to be used by the practitioners or the implementators. The practitioners and implementators know field realities much better than the researchers. However, the roles of both groups are very diverse and do not overlap much. Practitioners' role is very limited in the research itself, although they know the field realities better. They may be invited to participate in the research as either respondents or key stakeholders. They have little to do with the research design or how the research is being planned and controlled. So, in traditional research, the researchers and the practitioners and implementers are two diverse groups who rarely overlap. And this dichotomy in roles can be problematic when we do research in social work field, especially when the research issue being discussed or researched requires specialized field based knowledge. That is where action research or practitioner research as it is used comes in. This type of research can provide a good solution to this problem of dichotomy. And today in this module, we are going to learn how action research helps social workers. Action research is a process in which practitioners examine their own practice in a very systematic manner using techniques of research. They use their experiential knowledge in the field when planning and conducting the research. Researchers are practitioners, so they can ensure that the findings are used appropriately. Participatory action research is a form of action research which involves collaboration and shared ownership, usually with the beneficiaries or the respondent groups. Both these paradigms are very useful in social work research because they lend themselves easily to social work settings and they have many traits in common with social work practice, as you will learn in this module. Moreover, since researchers and practitioners are the same, course correction and project modification can be made immediately, which is of great importance in social work settings because this makes the interventions more effective. The objectives today are, at the end of this session, you would have learnt about the concept of action research. You would have learnt about the role of a researcher in action research, practitioner researcher in action research, how reflection is used in action research. You would have learnt about the cycles of action research and understand how these function. You would have learnt about the importance of participatory action research and also understood something about the dilemmas that are implicit in participatory action research. First, we start out with the concept of action research. Action research usually focuses on action or intervention that is designed to improve one or more aspects of one's own work or one's own professional practice. Since it focuses on your own practice, your own work, it involves a great deal of thinking or reflection about how we work. Also, the way we approach the work that we do and the manner in which we actually work. Okay. In action research, the focus is on understanding, describing, interpreting and explaining situations or problems, while at the same time trying to change these situations or problems for the better working in collaboration with the client or target system. Action research is an orientation to research, which means you can use different methods to actually do the research. That is, you can use qualitative, quantitative or mixed methods can be used in an action research. There are many definitions of action research. Gilmore, Kranz and Remies define action research as research that aims to contribute to both practical concerns of people in an immediate problematic situation and to further the goals of social science simultaneously. Thus, there is a dual commitment in action research to study a system and concurrently collaborate with members of the system in changing it in what is together regarded as a desirable direction. The active collaboration accomplishing this twin goal requires the active collaboration of the researcher and the client, and thus it stresses on the importance of co-learning as a primary aspect of the research process. Carr and Chemists provide another definition. This is considered to be the classic definition of action research. They say that action research is simply a form of self-reflective inquiry undertaken by participants in social situations in order to improve the rationality and justice of their own practice, their understanding of these practices and the situations in which these practices are carried out. Robson adds that in any action research project, there is first the improvement of practice of some kind. Second, the improvement of an understanding of the practice by its practitioner, and third, improvement of the situation in which the practice takes place. So, we can understand that improvement of practice and situations in which this practice takes place are central to action research. Let us now look at how action research evolved as a concept across time. Kurt Lewin, a German social psychologist and educator, created the term action research in the 1940s to describe work that did not separate the investigation from the action needed to solve the problem. Action research became popular in the United States in the 1960s in the field of organizational development, in the 1970s in education in the United Kingdom, and in the 1970s in the field of social work and development in Latin America, when academicians began to be concerned about poverty and living conditions in developing countries. At this point, researchers were no longer perceived to be experts who knew all the answers. Opinions of local people and practitioners who work directly with the local people were increasingly seen as essential aspects of the research, of understanding and finding solutions. Researchers were no longer seen to be experts who had all the solutions to the problems. Opinions of local people and practitioners who work directly with the local people were increasingly seen as essential, because pure science no longer had all the solutions, especially to problems of poverty and underdevelopment. At this time, activism, emancipation and action research all became more popular, because all three focused on equalizing power relationship, on sharing power. In the 1980s, action research was used in assessments in rural settings, and by the late 1980s, the word participatory was added to the rural appraisal projects in India and in Kenya. Participatory assessment focused on collaborative and shared ownership between practitioner researchers and the beneficiaries. Action research and participatory action research have been used in social work settings in India since the 1990s. Now we go on to understanding the role of the researcher or practitioner researcher in action research. Since action research includes an element of personal inquiry, it looks at aspect of the researcher's own work. Okay? So, it is very important that the topic of action research be of interest to the researcher. Unlike traditional research, which focused on examining or understanding phenomena, action research is concerned with bringing about change, generating knowledge and empowering stakeholders, beneficiaries and or clients. An action researcher is usually called a practitioner researcher, because the researcher is actually a person working in the field setting who wishes to improve some aspect related to his or her work. So, you are a practitioner and a researcher at the same time. So, a practitioner researcher examines an area or issue that is close to his or her heart, which he or she wishes to change. But action research is not an informal personal investigation. Action research is research. So, it always involves purposeful reflection and a conscious challenging of interpretations. In other words, an action research project, you as the practitioner researcher would examine one or more aspects of your own professional practice in a systematic and deliberate manner using techniques of research. The site of your research is usually your workplace, your work setting where you are working on a daily basis. And since you as a researcher are central to the research, because this research is about you, your professional practice, your values and how you can become a better professional, the research has an autobiographical aspect to it. You must place yourself in the research and your rationale will have a personal tone to it. Most action researches are written in first person for these reasons. Because it focuses on an individual practitioner and his/her professional practice, action research is not and cannot be value free. But that does not mean you are biased. So, as a researcher in action research, you need to state your values with respect with relation to the research topic and examine your values along with your research as you go along. So, you examine your own values in action. You question your values, your actions and reflect on the same continuously through the research. At every point, you need to give careful thought to how your values are affecting and influencing the data collection and analysis of the data. This needs to be done through constant reflection, constant thinking, and that makes reflection an essential and integral part of any action research. Reflection in action research is at various levels. McNiff lists these as reflection on values, where the focus is on your values and that of the values of others and how these affect our action. Reflection on practice, where the focus is on how you are doing your work. Reflection on improvement, where the focus is on examining change to ensure that the change has taken place for bettering or improving the situation. The action researcher would look at what has improved and how the improvement has taken place, and then reflection on context, that would help you understand how the various systems help or hinder improvement. Researcher would raise questions that have global implications when doing this. Additionally, reflection can be done on action or in action. Reflection in action is done when you are carrying out an activity, in the midst of the activity, whereas reflection on action is done purposefully after the activity has been completed. Action research, as we mentioned earlier, is a cyclic process. Each cycle has a planning component, an action component, an observation component and a reflection component. The researcher first studies the situation and develops a plan of action that would help improve the situation. This is the planning component. Then they implement this, put it into practice to see what happens. This is the action component. Looking at what is happening because of this action involves observing the effects, and this is the observation component. Finally, you reflect on the entire process to see what are the strengths and weaknesses, what worked and what didn't work. This is the reflection component. Any research, action research can have one or more cycles of this depending on the length and duration of the project. On the screen, you can see the action research cycle. You have first the planning process, then you act, then you observe, then you reflect, and then you go to the next cycle. Okay. We now talk about what happens in each of these components, each of these aspects. In the planning stage, you identify an area of concern, that is the issue or aspect of your professional practice which you want to improve. You collect information on this. It could be from literature, it could be from secondary sources of data such as records, case studies, case histories, case reports in the NGO, or it could be from your group, your beneficiaries, your target group themselves, in which case it is primary data. You analyze this data and you complete your plan. In the action stage, you develop an action plan based on your analysis of the planning stage that you think will help you make the change, and you implement this plan for a fixed period of time. Okay. In the next phase, which is observation phase, you collect data related to the implementation process, the effects and so on. These are your evidence. And in the fourth stage, or the reflection component, you evaluate the effects based on the data you have collected in this third stage and see if the improvement that you want has actually taken place. You see what worked, what didn't, and what you need to change further. And then you go back and implement the whole cycle all over again. Action research is a process of constant learning. Researcher not only learns about the issue being researched, but also about the context within which the research takes place. And you keep track of your own growth as a researcher and as a professional. All this makes action research extremely exciting and very unique. How do you collect data in an action research project? One thing that you need to do in an action research project, which differs from all other researchers, is maintain a research diary. This is a useful tool for an action researcher. A research diary is a record of the research processes, of events, of reflections and thoughts experienced by the researcher. It helps the researcher keep track of the changes that occur inside him as a part of the research, as a result of the research. It is also a record of new ideas that emerge from literature review and from the actual research process. So, it is a constantly evolving note. It is notes to yourself that are constantly evolving. Maintaining a research diary makes the process of reflection a lot easier for the practitioner researcher. Other methods of data collection include observation guides, which could be used to assist observation of the clients or the practitioner researcher in action. Audio video recordings, these offer better evidence than observation guides and can be analyzed later as well. They are very useful when it comes to observing one's own work, because otherwise you will have to get somebody else to look at it. Semi-structured or structured interviews, these are commonly used data collection tools and have been covered previously, and they can be used for your action research as well. Case records, which are individual client records which would be maintained by the organization, you can use those as well. Or you can use statistical data as further evidence to prove or support the analysis for any one of the above. Field notes, which are taken by the practitioner researcher when conducting field visits or home visits, these can be treated as data and subject to analysis. Photographs can be used as data and analyzed in a variety of ways. And you can also use questionnaires for your action research, where you are asking your participants how they felt about the intervention that you have done. Okay. These have also been mentioned and covered previously, how to design and how to develop questionnaires. So, this is action research in brief. Now, we come to participative action research. There are a number of definitions for participative action research. We will talk through some of them. Participative action research is a new paradigm that entails doing research with and for people rather than on people. Participative action research is a real world research that adopts and employs critical approaches, including critical reflection, with a focus on improving human life. And now we come to one of the most comprehensive definitions of action research, of participative action research, which states that this is a form of action research which professional social workers operate as full collaborators with members of organizations in studying and transforming those organizations. It is an ongoing organizational learning process, a research approach that emphasizes co-learning, participation and organizational transformations. Based on these, we can call out the unique features of participative action research as it focuses on change, it is context specific, it involves collaboration, partnership and shared ownership. The beneficiaries are invested in the research. It generates data or knowledge through shared collaborative and collective efforts. It is based on the action research cycle of plan, act, observe, reflect. It assumes that knowledge is relative, uncertain, evolving, contextual and value based. So, these are some of the basic unique traits of participatory action research. Okay. Participatory action research also explains causality in terms of local realities and existing microstructures. However, participatory action research comes with a lot of inherent dilemmas and problems. Ethical dilemmas, as mentioned by Manzo and Bridable, include it's very difficult to maintain anonymity of respondents since ownership and control is shared. Your respondents are co-owners and it's a shared, the control is shared. So, it's difficult to maintain anonymity of their anonymity. It can sometimes create discomfort in their lives because it empowers them and the situations around do not change. For example, if you are working with teenage girls and you are doing an action research project with them which teaches them about rights of women and importance of education and things like that. As a result of these, the girls want to delay their marriages, but their parents are not willing to do so. Then it creates discomfort in their lives because the girls now want to study and do not want to get married early, but their parents want them to get married early, in which case you need to work with the parents as well. Just doing the participatory action research might end up creating too much discomfort for the girls. Okay. Ensuring free consent is again a problem because the researcher is a participant and insider. So, you are part of the group, so the group members, the teenage girls might feel pressured in some way to give consent, though they might not want to do so because of a power inequality. You are trying to treat them as equal, but you are the worker and they are the children. So, you know, there is an adult child relationship and inequality comes in. So, one has to be very careful in dealing with all these three things. Then there are academic dilemmas. These three were ethical dilemmas. So, you need to tread very carefully and work out solutions to deal with these ethical dilemmas. Now, we discuss the academic dilemmas. First is it might be very difficult to involve other participants in the data management process and analysis process as well as documentation process, because A, there are time related issue, B, you're going back to the teenage girls group, they might not have the skills to do the analysis and the data entry, and you as a practitioner who's trained have better skills. Okay. 3, the acceptance of recognition that full participation in analysis could enhance their vulnerability. You might have been doing multiple groups, so sharing information across the groups could enhance their vulnerability, which could be damaging. So, this is a bit of a problem. Okay. Also, the practitioner and researcher definitely has better research skills and more knowledge to carry out the analysis and documentations. These are some of the academic challenges. The focus of participative action research is on generating localized knowledge to benefit the participating group and community. It does not contribute to theory building, okay, or development of theory, which is the focus of many academic researchers. Also, since it is very local and very specific, it is not generalizable. These may therefore give rise to criticism in academic circles because of this. Okay. Theory might emerge from your action research project, but that is not the focus of your action research project. Because of these, there may be problems with academic dilemmas may arise. Okay. Data collection tools that are used in participatory action research are very similar to that are used in other researches. Include surveys, participant observation, interviews, community mapping, group discussions, and of course your research diaries. You can get the other participants also to maintain research diaries and use that as evidence. Now, we've talked a lot about what action research is and what participatory action research is. We now look at its use in the social work settings. Action research and participative action research are easily used in social work settings because they are in keeping with social work values. For example, social work is people oriented. Action research and participatory action research are also people oriented. Both lay emphasis on participation. Researchers are located within the research and researchers are part of the research itself. They are practitioner researchers. So, this is another important thing that suits social work settings. Action research and participatory action research are collaborative efforts. Researchers work with people and not for people, which is once again a key principle of social work. We work with the people, not for the people. Ownership is shared and clients are seen as co-researchers, which is again participatory work. We talk about social work and community work being participatory nowadays. So, action research and participatory action research fit into this context. To conclude and summarize, action research is a process in which participants examine their own practice systematically and carefully using research techniques. Participative action research is a form of action research which involves collaboration and shared ownership, usually with beneficiaries or respondent groups. The term action research was created in 1940s by Kurt Lewin, a German social psychologist and educator. The word participatory was added to rapid rural assessment projects in India and Kenya in the late 1980s. Action research and participatory action research have been used in social work settings in India since the 1990s. Reflection and discussion are two essential aspects of action research. Action research follows a cyclic process. Planning, action, observation and reflection are four components of each cycle. In action research, the researcher also keeps track of his/her growth as a researcher and as a professional. The research diary is an important tool of data collection in action research and participatory action research. Action research and participatory action research are well suited for social work settings because they are people oriented, emphasize participation and involve collaboration. I hope this module has given you a good understanding of what action research and participatory action research are and that you will use these in the future. Thank you.